Hey everybody, happy National Coming Out Day. I'm so excited to be here and celebrate today with all of you. I know it looks a lot different this year than other years because we're at home quarantining and some of our family, our queer family, is having a really hard time. So we wanted to make sure that we were very intentional this year to focus on health and wellness. And we're going to do that two ways this October. Number one, we are going to be celebrating with you all October with our Pride Stride. It's the very first national 5 and 10K. You can walk it, you can run it. It's just a really safe and great way to get outside, reduce your stress levels, get some fresh air and after all of this quarantining. So we welcome you to participate in that. Today is the kickoff day, and I know we have 33 prides across the country celebrating this with us as our kickoff to the month. And secondly, on National Coming Out Day, we wanted to make sure that we were providing some health and wellness resources to all y'all. So we came up with this panel, and I have an amazing group of panelists to chat with us today. Some are doctors, some are therapists, some are yoga instructors and community organizers. So we're going to have a really productive conversation, and I hope you get some tips and resources that you can bring into your life during this quarantine. Okay, so without further ado, I'll have Tyler bring up my panelists for today. Hey, everybody. Hi. Happy National Coming Out Day. Thanks for being with us.
Yay. Great to be here.
So I would love to introduce you all, but I think it would be best if you introduce yourselves. So why don't you go through the panel and just offer us your name, your pronouns, and a little bit about what you do in health and wellness. Bix, we'll start with you.
Okay, sure. I'm Bixby Marino Kidney. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I'm the director of the Center for Gender Affirming Care at Brady Children's Hospital. So I am very privileged to see patients and their families as they're embarking on a gender journey.
Awesome. And I worked with you, Bix, I think at the center, at the LGBT Center a while back. So it's good to see you in this wonderful new role. Vanessa?
Hey there, my name is Vanessa Pineda, she, her, hers, and I am the lead outreach coordinator for a program at Jewish Family Service called Breaking Down Barriers. And the goal of our program is to reduce mental health stigma in communities of color, the LGBT community, and where those communities intersect. And we also do cultural humility trainings for providers who are serving those communities.
That is such great work. And I know you did a self-care sesh with our Cappy Meta group too. They really appreciated being involved in that. So thank you for this good work. Adrian?
And I'm a member of Frontrunners, and that's how they heard about me. I'm also a medical doctor, and I've been involved in research dealing with HIV and liver disease and heart disease. And so I'm really excited about the National Coming Out Day, and look forward to having a discussion about ways that we can help people in the community and support each other as we go through this thing called life.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. And I can't tell you, I started running this year with your Pride run, the Pride 5K. So I'd never run in my life, and it was wonderful to start doing quarantine. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Danny, last but not least, hi, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Daniel. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a trans, queer, non-binary human person. I'm a yoga instructor and a trans rights advocate and educator. I do a lot of education work within yoga communities and wellness communities on how to create more affirming spaces for trans individuals, and how these practices of yoga and meditation and those kind of healing modalities can uplift and help trans communities, trans and queer communities. Yeah.
I see you doing it on the Instagram, and can I tell you, it is so inspiring. It makes me want to just wrap myself in a pretzel. So thank you for being out there and doing that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So our first question is, a lot of people thinking of coming out as a singular event, right? But some of us who have been through the process know that it can be multi-layered. It can be, you can come out once in one way and come out in another way. For example, for my own journey, I came out very early in my life as a lesbian, and then my partner transitioned to male. So that, precipitated a ton of different conversations that I have to have with my friends and family. And it could even be the communities in which you're coming out to folks. So what I wanted to ask, because it's very stressful right now with pandemics and folks are being housed with unsupported, family members and roommates, what can we do to take care of ourselves in the coming out process? What are some steps that you can give people either from your personal journey or from your professional background? And Adrienne, let's start with you. What tips could you give folks taking care of themselves during this process?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to try to live have a healthy lifestyle. And so for me, physical activity is very important. And so, for example, like I alternate days of running and bicycling, and I try to eat healthy. And I would recommend to others that just being outdoors, especially if you're in an environment that's not very welcoming, where you feel bad about being who you are, I think it's important to do something that makes you feel good. And so for me, that's being outside, and I love. I mean, I live really close to the park, so I go to the park pretty often. I think that doing something, even if it's just going for a walk. No one ever takes a walk and at the end of it says, "Gee, I really should not have done that." I think it's enjoyable to be outside, and we're blessed with really great weather, and so that's one of the things that I believe. Or if you have a hobby, like I do a lot of gardening, and I'm into I like to cook, and so things that bring you pleasure, I think that's really important in order to try and get through this time. It's a difficult time right now, this pandemic.
Absolutely. Bix, what would you add?
So I think, for me, being an openly queer and trans person is part of the work that I'm doing at Brady Children's Hospital. So, educating based on, kind of my professional experience, but also my lived experience in a setting that is, doesn't have very many out, queer. I think staying connected to community and making sure that I have those spaces where I'm connecting with people that have just similar experiences to me, and giving myself that downtime of not having to be an educator all the time, but spaces where I educate anyone. I can just kind of like live my life and be myself.
Love that.
And that's be in person. So I know there are some people who don't have access geographically, or are living in situations where they can't maybe connect in person. But now has been there's been a silver lining, I think, to quarantine, and that a lot of things are accessible over Zoom now, and people who aren't geographically close to other people can still connect.
What about you, Danny?
I think the biggest things, especially if you're in, I know that I personally have been very fortunate to be in a space and kind of in shelter in place where I'm in an affirming space. And so I've been very fortunate in that way throughout all of quarantine. If you're in a space that is not affirming, and if you're in a space that doesn't really recognize or include you in your authenticity, like Adrienne said, going for a walk, just getting outside is kind of seeing the sun, especially if you're in San Diego, as we all are.
How can you
right
avoid
now,
it at this point?
Imagine.
It's so hot out there.
Right, exactly. Just inviting in little moments of pure joy, and whatever that looks like. Sometimes it's a really small action, and I understand throughout all of quarantine, it's been difficult. It's been an up and a down, especially I imagine if you're in an unaffirming environment. And so even if that one moment of joy is like getting up and getting a glass of water and staying hydrated that day, like know that that's enough, and be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself, because we're all going through a lot right now, right? So I think giving yourself some access to a gentleness within your own space, and allowing yourself moments of joy, allowing yourself moments of peace, however it is that you're showing up in whatever moment it is. So I think the things that have helped me most are definitely getting up and getting outside, even if it's just walking out the front door, seeing the sun for 10 minutes and then going back inside, even if it's just that's been super helpful. Yeah. And for me also, movement is very important to me. So I practice yoga every single day and I meditate every single day. Those are things that I try to give access to trans communities with. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to reach out to me, because that has also been really helpful in navigating all of this. So yeah.
I bet. That's a wonderful resource. Vanessa?
Yeah, so thank you. I definitely say like knowing like internally what you can do on that individual level, like folks have shared, is so important, right? Like that getting outside, that meditating, any space for spirituality is beautiful. And then also like leaning into our community. I know we're quarantined during these times, but like there are folks out there, hopefully in your situation that might be supporting you in any level. And so I would say it's so important to lean into them, even if it's just a phone call or Zoom or, you know, hanging out in a park 6 feet apart. You know, so like knowing our chosen family and those people that we can count on, and other healers too. So if you engage in therapy, that's a beautiful space to help support you in that process, or other healers in general as well. So yeah.
I love that. I agree. And I will also want to make a caveat that we kind of see this narrative in the media that coming out is the brave thing to do. But that doesn't mean that people who are not ready to come out, right? Speaking of therapy, Vanessa, that they're not brave, right? They just might not be ready, and or they might not be, as Danny pointed out, in a safe, supportive environment. So you all represent sort of different organizations and different backgrounds of modes of wellness and health. How can people discern for themselves what is the right time? Like what would constitute in your eyes, you know, a healthy choice to come out? What's a healthy choice, Bix? It's so hard, right?
Yeah, I think keeping kind of your own emotional safety at the center of any decision that you're making. And I think it's really easy sometimes to feel pressure from loved ones or pressure from community, like you said, that being out is the brave thing to do. And everyone really needs to kind of make that decision for themselves. And I think also kind of paying attention to your own personal boundaries. And I work with a lot of young people who feel this pressure or that they're not allowed to have boundaries because oftentimes, you know, society doesn't give queer and trans people that option to say like, no, that question's too invasive, or no, I don't want to share that information with you. So I think as someone's embarking on possibly, you know, sharing what may be really intimate details about themselves, you know, just knowing ahead of time what's going to be okay and what's not going to be okay, and giving your permission to say no.
I love that. Thank you. Adrian?
I was thinking about this question, and I think when people consider how they feel about coming out in the space they're in, like what they're facing, and it's true that it's not necessarily brave or not brave if you choose to not come out, considering the circumstance. And I have one that's related to professional. A professional way of looking at it. I had a really good friend who was going off to, she got accepted to do a general surgery residency. She was a medical doctor, and she was out in her class. Everyone knew her. But then when she went to interviews, she was not out. She didn't talk about something that was actually a very big part of her life. And she also happened to be the president of this big organization I was involved in for medical students. And so she was feeling bad about it, but she wanted to have this discussion with us about it. And so what the important thing was, she was in a space where she was going all across the country, and there were some environments where people were more accepting and the doors would have been open, and other environments where people were not very open-minded about this. And so if she were to come out in an interview, her chances would have been ruined. And so she was trying to create an open possibility for everywhere so she would have the best chance. So in other words, she was looking out for herself. It was in her best interest to be quiet about that, because quite honestly, yeah, we could say, we're, part of this community, but we're also many other things. I'm I'm a runner, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm, someone's, niece, we're all kinds of other things too. And so it's really not the most important thing, even though it is a very big part of our lives. And so, and then once she got accepted and was in that space, then she felt comfortable, being open about who she was. But the problem is, you don't shoot yourself in the foot. You don't close the doors before you're able to get through them. And so it comes from this inner feeling of, does it feel safe to do this in a professional circumstance?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think so many people have been in that situation. So I think it's very helpful. Vanessa, do you have something to add?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely also want to highlight that coming out is certainly a personal choice, like many people had shared, right? It comes from this internal feeling where we're like, I just got to do this, right? Like, but also to acknowledge the complexities of who gets to come out, what does that look like? And in certain communities, I think you might risk like losing your family or your community as well. And so it's really back to that personal choice, right? Like some individuals might come out in a very soft way, like, hey, I'm going to bring this friend over. Like, right, I think we all know the code for friend here. So that's right, like sitting in my cis privilege, like maybe just a way that I might come out. But just to acknowledge, right, like in different communities, we might do this differently. And to say something like, I'm queer, or I'm a lesbian, or things like that to our family might in some ways potentially be a sign of disrespect, or maybe our families just don't get it. Or, often we're living in two worlds when we look at it from this BIPOC lens. And so I think I just want to even acknowledge that, to know that like there's really no right choice. It's based on this internal feeling that you have and how you want to live your own truth. And that can look so many different ways with so many different people in so many different communities.
That's right. And we don't always use the same language, right? And everywhere. So culturally speaking, coming out may not even be a thing. So we thank you for bringing that perspective. And Danny?
Yeah, I think, like you said it in the beginning with the question, it's often seen as brave to come out. And I think the brave work and the bravery is self-identifying, is that inquiry within self, right? Because we live in a society that so often tells us the fact that we have to come out as a whole. Society is often telling us that there's something different or wrong about our existence. And so just the simple act of inquiring within is brave, is courageous. And I think that's incredible. So if you're not verbally saying anything, that's okay. Like if you're not out in that capacity, know that you're still valid, because that courage just to look beyond what society has tried to tell you for so long is a brave act in and of itself. And so I think that's where a lot of real bravery comes from. And a lot of times it's physical safety, right? Like if you're not able to come out because there are still queer youth still being kicked out of their homes, you know what I mean? And things of that nature. So if that's the case, like your safety matters the most, your safety matters the most, and like, that's it, full stop. So if you're not able to be out verbally and talk about it and live in that capacity, that doesn't make you any less valid in your identity and how you exist in this world. Like Adrienne had brought up, like sometimes for job's sake, it's better to not be fully out and talking about, so I think there's a lot of different layers to coming out, and it is a journey. It is a process. Since I came out the first time, and I've used so many different words to describe my identity. When I first came out, I came out as bisexual and then a lesbian. And, there's so many different things that have happened, and it is a constant journey. And I think the most liberating thing is that self-inquiry. It is giving yourself permission to continue to shift and change and grow, and put new words to that as your language develops. Kind of keep inquiring and keep shifting your own perspective. And sometimes if you want to talk about that, that's amazing. Like live like that. That's super. Thank you for showing up in your authenticity in that way. And if that's not accessible to you, that's also okay. All of it is really brave. However you're showing up is really brave and really incredible. So.
Thank you so much for saying that. It really resonated with me. As I shared, initially I came out as a lesbian. When my partner transitioned to male, I was like, well, maybe I'll say bisexual now or pansexual. And then, so now my joke is that I'm still a lesbian. I'm just really bad at it. So, so you're right. Like, you can try different things on and just see if they work. And if they don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be one certain way. And I also wanted to acknowledge, we have quite a few folks in the comments and sharing they came out at 57 and they came out to their dad and it was really hard. So I just wanted to acknowledge them in the comments just briefly and just say, we hear you and we see you and we're here with you. So we get it. We've been through it. For the next question, it kind of talks a little bit about what are some of the things that, you all sort of represent different aspects of our community, different resources. And this, I just want to sort of give you an opportunity right now when folks are, at home in quarantine, they're having a hard time. What are some free resources that you yourself, provide or that you know of in the community that they might want to make use of during this time of social distancing? I know we have a lot of stuff going on, especially virtually. So I'm going to start with Danny.
Yeah, there are. So the internet, Zoom, this virtual world is such an interesting thing, right? I think it can be I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful that we exist in a time where we are able to continue to access community in this way. I think at the beginning of quarantine, if I hadn't had access to continued community and community support, it would have been a lot more difficult. And so there are so many, I know I offer trans-led yoga classes, and I have a network of trans and queer teachers that if you're interested in that and you want space held for you in that way, I have so many resources for that. So please feel free to reach out. But there are so many community gatherings. I've seen so many people doing like community outreach programs where we can just show up and it's as if there was an event at the center. I remember I used to go to events at the center where it was like every other Wednesday, it was like a trans meetup. And there are things like that via Zoom. And so if you can find things like that, off the top of my head, I don't know if the one I'm thinking of is still going on. That's why I'm not mentioning it. But I follow a couple people on Instagram that are offering community events like that. And so while this internet, and it can be really it's an interesting balance to find when you don't want to necessarily be sitting in front of a screen for 12 hours a day. But if you can carve out time and be intentional about the time that you're spending on a screen and say, I'm committing these 3 hours to being a part of this community gathering, to take this yoga class, to take this fitness class, to whatever it is. And then for every 2 hours I spend on the computer, I'm going to spend 10 minutes outside, something to find balance in that way. Because these screens can be really draining. I'm sure we've all felt that at this point. So yeah, I think in terms of resources and in that capacity, I mostly have yoga resources. And so if anyone's interested in that, I know that has been incredibly helpful for me and so many other trans people, because the trans yoga community has really blossomed in quarantine. It gives us all access to this healing practice that we didn't really have access to, because going into those physical spaces can be pretty difficult. And so to be able to do it from the comfort of your home has been really pivotal in my experience of quarantine. So that's the biggest thing that I can kind of push out there for sure.
That sounds amazing. Vanessa, what you got going on?
So thanks for letting me join back. I dropped off.
No worries.
But yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what's been shared so far, but I'll say the Genderfluid Collective is still holding groups. They're BIPOC specific org, and I believe the center is, or Trans Family Support Service. I feel like so many different mental health professionals have been doing telemental health, and though that has been amazing, just to, in some ways, I think bring more access to people who might not want to leave their homes or things like that. So, and I also recommend just joining particular groups online that you're excited about. Meeting friends in different areas. So if you're excited about reading, maybe there's an awesome queer reading group out there, or just doing like game nights with friends. But definitely, like Daniel said, like being intentional about like where you're putting that energy, because a lot of us are on our computers or on our phones like a lot more than we've historically been. So yeah.
That is for sure. I definitely did not think I would be on the computer this much in my life. So absolutely. But some of it's been really great. I've been actually doing some virtual community organizing just in my spare time away from Pride. And it's been a fantastic way to connect with community members personally. So what about you, Adrienne? Have you some resources you might want to give to folks?
I found it to be a pretty hard time in the sense that a lot of the activities I spent a lot of my time with before the pandemic, everything got canceled. And so I was involved in these really big groups, and we do these physical activities, and our whole year got canceled. And so that's been very difficult. On the other hand, as has been mentioned, is that the center does still have those Zoom meetings online, and I do think that that's a very important resource. And I want to echo that what was also said about sometimes it can be hard to show up physically to those spaces, and so it is actually maybe a silver lining that you could just show up on your computer to check these things out. I think that's really good. I do also know that there are meetups of so many different activities and interests online where and some of those meetups you can meet them online, and then they'll meet in a physical space and then practice social distancing, things like for hiking again, so being outdoors and doing something healthy. So yeah, it's a difficult time, but perhaps if we can look at the silver lining of it's maybe a safer space to be able to meet people online and then connect.
Absolutely.
Later.
I know, and I wanted to add one that I'm going to utilize myself. I know the Live and Let Live folks at Lana Club also has their meetings for sober people, and children of alcoholics are now happening virtually. Bix, what about y'all?
So I would definitely echo the Genderfluid Collective and Trans Family Support Services and the Center. I know they're all continuing to run groups as well as Pride. Our Safe Place is another one that I would add in there. A lot of their stuff is shared through social media, and they've really been a lifeline for a lot of the kids that I'm seeing at Brady. In terms of our services, we've continued services both in person and via Zoom. We're able to now see people up to age 26. So even if you just call and talk to someone and have a question about a resource, it doesn't matter if you ultimately end up receiving medical care through our clinic. We're happy to kind of serve as a hub for connecting.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you for saying that. And I see in the comments here, someone said that PFLAG support groups are all going to be held via Zoom right now, which is amazing. So you can see that comment right there. Thanks for bringing that up, Tyler. And I also want to name check our youth ambassadors at Pride have been doing a gorgeous job with the Youth Power Hour, which meets bi-weekly. So if you are a youth out there who needs some support, you can always just drop in, no pressure, and just chat with some other youth. So those are some great resources. Thanks for name checking those. And then, so a lot of those have to do with our mental health, but all of us on this panel know that physical health is correlated, right? And sometimes when we see the stress, it starts to erode us physically. Some of the symptoms we could be seeing, not wanting to go anywhere, just feeling like you can't get anything done, not even want to get out of bed. Some of that can be related to the mental health stress of this pandemic. So maybe if you could share a way y'all have been taking care of your bodies or recommending to clients that they take care of their bodies. I know you've shared some, and also what are the ways, like preventative steps? Like, is there a way that you can keep a track of that, of your mental and physical health, some ways to sort of like keep on top of it during this time? So Bix, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think that these are really unprecedented times, and people, I think the uncertainty of when things are gonna go back to quote unquote normal, all of those things I think really weigh on people. I think finding some way to have a routine. I think Daniel mentioned like the routine that you kind of have for yourself. It's so easy to get away from those routines that we have that kind of keep us grounded and keep us kind of doing things in our lives that are important. Finding time to get outside, even if it's literally walking your dog around the block for 10 minutes, seeing the sun every day at some point, I think really can help with mood. And then staying connected to those people that, that you care about, even if that's just a text here and there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just doing something that helps you feel better, I think is really important.
That's great. Danny? And I know you're a believer in the connection between mental and physical wellness. So go ahead, kick us off. What's up?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about mental and physical health being intertwined because truthfully, it's undeniable that they are, right? I think emotions and feelings manifest in our physical body, and that can be in so many different ways. I could speak to the fact that, heavier emotions like anger and frustration sit in the hips, and you can think about that if you're ever frustrated or anything, there's tension in your body. Normally you're squeezing the hips, and like that manifests as physical tension in your space. So that's just like a surface level. And then when you think about anxious emotions or anything like that, anything that produces anxiety, you'll start to notice your breath shortening, and it probably is living up here or up towards the collarbones. And it's really hard to get a big full breath in when you're feeling really anxious. Oftentimes when there's depression manifesting in your space, if you notice your breathing pattern, your inhales normally inflate the body, your exhales deflate the body. But if there's like deep-seated depression happening, often that's switched. And so when we can kind of tune into our space and understand how those things are manifesting in our body, that's how we can start to make shifts and start to make changes, right? It's through that kind of deeper awareness. And so I know that we as queer people, as LGBT members of the LGBTQ community, everybody I'm sure here knows that statistically speaking, LGBTQIAP community members experience mental illness at a much higher rate than our cis het counterparts, right? And so the fact that that just is a statistic, that is a fact right now, and then lumped onto that the pandemic that's happening, and then lumped onto that the fact that some people are living in unaffirming environments, and then lumped onto that unemployment, and like not nearly as readily access to healthcare and all of these other things. Finding small practices that you can do that invite in joy. And that's something that I've been really focusing on. Is oftentimes our society glorifies production and your time spent being of value based on how much you can produce. So what I've been really practicing mindfully is inviting in moments where you're doing something simply because it makes you happy, without putting a time restraint on that, and without kind of being like, okay, I can have fun for 15 minutes and then I have to go back to working. It's like, no, just like listen to that song, do that thing, and allow yourself that moment to just put your mind at ease, because then it starts to shift your day. And so I think the biggest thing when I think of mental health and relation to physical health, start to inquire internally. And the way I do that is with the breath specifically. So like I said, if you're feeling anxious or anything like that, the breath tends to shorten. So if you feel the breath getting really tense in the chest, I recommend taking really deep breaths, like belly breaths, like breathing into the low belly and allowing your whole body to expand. And that immediately takes you out of this fight, flight, freeze mode and allows you to drop into a more like rest and digest state. And then once you have that and you're recentered and regrounded, then moving from there and seeing what you need in that moment. Maybe it's getting outside, maybe it's just standing up and stretching for a moment, maybe you need water and you haven't hydrated in 2 hours. There's, I think, the mind plays tricks on us and it takes us in a lot of different directions. And so when we can kind of reset, we can start to ask what we need. And I do want to point to the fact that that's not going to be like the heal all cure all by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a step in the right direction. And then maybe when we get regrounded, we can start to reach out to a friend, to a family member, send a text, have a safe word with someone and say like, whatever your safe word is, like pineapples, and that person knows they need to call you in that moment, because you're having a really rough day. And so I think putting these practices into place that are kind of like checklist items. Like, I woke up feeling a little bit off, so I notice my breath, I see what's happening. I text my friend because that's not working. I text my other friend because that's not working. And then when you have those steps set up, it's more of you're being more proactive and less reactive. And that allows you to create more comfort in your space. So
I love that. It's so simple, but so true, right? Like, try to have multiple tools in the toolbox and be more aware of when you need to put them into practice. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Adrian, you're a doctor on our panel. What say you about the connection between mental health and physical wellness?
Yeah, well, there's a very strong connection, obviously. And so we've been in this pandemic for 6 months now, and it's a difficult time. I think many people are having a hard time with this. But when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking that there are some ways that you can actually see physically in your body what has happened if you're stressed out. And so some of the ways, for example, you might have gained weight. So people will gain weight when they're under immense amount of stress, but also you could have maybe lost a lot of weight if you're under a lot of stress. And or sometimes people tend to like break out on their body, have maybe more acne or something, or if you're just not being, if you notice that you're engaging in more unhealthful activities. For example, maybe you're drinking more, okay? Or maybe you're abusing drugs. So these are ways that that unhealthiness can be a physical manifestation in our body, and also in the activities that we do. And so I think it is important to check in with yourself, and I do agree that the breathing is really important. I mean, that's a good way to do it. Or if you have friends you can check in with, that's really important. But also the fact that just to also be easy on yourself, because recognize that the pandemic is an inherently stressful thing, and this usually only happens once in a lifetime. No one's used to this. No one's had this happen before. And we're all going through this together. It's a difficult time, but pay attention to, yourself, and really important to seek help if these are issues.
Thank you for that so much. Vanessa?
I feel like you all did such a good job at explaining that. So thank you. I think the piece that I'll add is oftentimes language gives us the tools to describe what's happening in our bodies. And sometimes depending on, the language that you speak, you might not have certain words to describe mental health conditions or things that are happening. So oftentimes when we look at BIPOC communities, we certainly see a strong correlation with somatic or body symptoms and mental health. And so really, like Daniel had shared, like this inner reflection of like, how does my body typically feel when I'm feeling good and things are going well? And kind of almost maybe using that as a scope for when things are good, and then knowing when things maybe aren't so good, when things are in the middle. So using ourself as a gauge, our body as a gauge for our own health and well-being is incredibly important. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And I'm going to switch it up on Tyler. I apologize in advance on all of you, but I saw a really wonderful question in the chat, so I'm going to pose it to you. We have Grayson who's watching at home, and they are involved in Project Out, and they have some folks coming to them with various concerns about bullying, right? So politics, bullying online from others during this time. And so what can you do? Let's say if you're, and we've actually heard this from our youth, in that the polarized times have heard, like, sort of the youth have seen an uptick in sort of like this very polarized language that's being used at home and at school. So, and just not feeling really great about that. So what can people do? And I know I'm just going to say personally, for what I've been suggesting to my staff, is decrease your use of social media when it's not intentional, right? Because those messages are coming at you, and you don't know when you're scrolling up like what the next message is going to be. So that's what I'm going to throw in. But Bix, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I'm seeing that a ton with kids that I'm seeing who are kind of stuck at home, and families are debating politics. And I think, cis het family members are struggling to understand why the young, queer and trans and non-binary people in their homes are so impacted by these conversations. So it's okay to say, I'm not engaging in that conversation with you. It's okay to have that boundary. I think also, like you said, tapping out from social media if it's not something that's benefiting you. I think we don't have to think about social media in a binary good bad kind of way, but paying attention to the way that you're engaging in social media is helpful for you or is causing kind of more distress.
I love that. Vanessa, what would you say for folks experiencing bullying, especially in the BIPOC community?
I would say I'm sorry. And I know it's super hard, and these are really honestly difficult times for a lot of us. And really, when I think of just like BIPOC communities, like leaning into each other, like using each other for support, and kind of like create, like Bixby said, like creating those boundaries around things that are not serving us, and to be firm and okay with being firm about that. Like, no, I don't want to hear, or I don't want to engage in this type of conversation with you. And I will acknowledge that is extremely hard. Myself, like being Latina, like sometimes speaking up, it doesn't feel like something that's always natural to me, but to know that I am of value and my feelings are of value and that I don't have to tolerate specific things, is a way to stand up for yourself, and also to create that healthy space that we need in times where it's just very difficult.
Adrienne, bullying?
What's been said is just that's pretty true. Establishing those boundaries and recognizing that you have control in the situation as well. You can take yourself out of that space, and yeah, if it's virtual, then do something else. Now's the time to go and get some sun, some fresh air. It's pretty difficult, but yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this too, because I mean, I think we've all seen this. It's political season now, and one thing that I would like to say is, like I have family members who are on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but we don't engage in that because there's no use, and you're not gonna. It's difficult to change someone's mind, and it's really hard because it does really seem to be there's this side, and then there's the whole 180-degree opposite side, and so that's difficult. But if you can come around to where you can meet over something else, for example, with my family members, I mean, we have so much more in common if we just set the politics part of it aside. So maybe that would be one way I could say you could get around that. But standing up for yourself, I do like that that you mentioned it, and recognizing that you have control. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about your beliefs. They're your beliefs, and that's who you are. You believe them, and you have every right to be able to express yourself. So if you're being bullied, you need to get yourself out of that situation.
Thank you. And Danny?
Yeah, in regards to bullying, I think that's cyberbullying has been a thing. It's a lot easier for people to sit behind a screen and type things than it is to kind of show up and say them. And so right now, being that everything is online, it's giving people this courage that they didn't necessarily have before, especially as we're in a political season. And I think the thing that I really get caught up on is that people aren't recognizing that it's not it's not just politics, right? Oftentimes, like in this moment, in this election right now, right here and now, a lot of people are voting like their life depends on it, because it quite literally does. Like quite literally, a lot of our rights are being taken away in a way that's harmful for our lives, right? And so if it feels empowering to you, this is with coming out, this is with standing up for yourself with bullying, this is with any conversation that you're having. If it's empowering you and the why behind that conversation is because it feels good for you, stand up for yourself, come out, do that, like hold space for yourself in that way. If you're coming out or if you're standing up for yourself because it feels like an obligation or you're feeling pressured to do so,
Right.
know that you don't have to do that. And being that, like, cyberbullying is very real. You should not have to, I'm sorry that you have to remove yourself from a platform because of someone else's actions. You should not have to do that, and that is not fair. But for your safety and well-being, I would recommend removing yourself from that platform and removing yourself from that situation, because through a cyber situation, you can do that. No, it's not right. No, it's not okay that you're not able to enjoy the platform in the same way that other people are because of bullying. But for your safety and your well-being, I would recommend removing yourself in that way. But yeah, I think if you're able to do that and kind of take space from the situation, block that person, block whatever it is, try not to engage and try to fill your feed with people that are in alignment with you and things that are in alignment with you. I would say try to go that route in terms of bullying specifically.
Amazing. Thank you. And Grayson says thank you to all of you for taking that question. It was helpful to them. And then if anyone's out there being bullied, I can tell you some advice my mom gave me when I was a young queer person being bullied. And it's that you can be the juiciest peach in the world, and there's just some people out there who don't like peaches. That doesn't mean you're not fabulous. So just remember that. And then I guess our last question for today is on a personal note, and I'm not going to call on you because I don't want to pressure, but do you have any advice for folks out there watching who are in the middle of their coming out process based on your own personal experience? So you can popcorn it and share the space and share from your own personal experiences.
I heard this advice from a community member today that I really respect, who was talking about how, don't feel like you have to make yourself digestible to other people. So it's okay to feel like there's no word that kind of like fully explains the nuance of my identity, or, I have to frame things in a way that's going to be understandable to other people, because people's identities are much more complex than that. Like language is a moving target where we're always coming up with new ways to describe kind of the complexity of identity. And so what matters most is that internal sense of like knowing who you are and knowing how you want to show up in the world. And there are some people who will fully see you for who you are, and there are other people that won't. But it's not your job to make yourself kind of easier or more palatable, to assimilate into kind of what's comfortable for other people.
Thank you for that. That's so great. Anyone else want to share their experience? Danny.
I just want to thank you for that. I think what you said, language is a moving target, and it's not your job to make yourself more palatable, is everything, because you are not existing in this life for anybody but yourself. And so however you show up and however you choose to show up that day, and it could be different every single day, it could be different in the morning and then the evening. You know what I mean? Like, we're constantly evolving, growing, shifting, and changing. And so however you're showing up, you're courageous in showing up in that. You're so strong in showing up in that. So remain connected to who you are. And if at any point you're making decisions because you're trying to assimilate or to be more palatable for someone else, it all starts with the why. So why am I doing this? Why am I making this decision? Why did I choose to put on this shirt as opposed to a different shirt? Like, inquire within and move from there. And I recognize that that's not, it's easier said than done, right? It's not the easiest thing to do in this life when you're constantly inundated with outside messages. So in your coming out journey, in your coming out experience, give yourself freedom to explore and give yourself leeway to be gentle with yourself. Every single day that you show up and inquire within, you're doing a great job. You're really resilient in that. So that in and of itself is amazing and incredible. So yeah.
Yay, this is all wonderful.
I would just say, like, your existence is beautiful, and to really like listen to yourself. And there's a lot of narratives around what coming out looks like, right? And so there's not just one path. There's so many different ways that you can do it, and really in a super cheesy way, but like a really real way. My dad's always like, follow your heart, but like it's so true, and you can do that in so many different aspects of your life. So even in your coming out experience, right?
Amazing. Thank you. Oh, Adrian, are you sharing with us? You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I would like to share my my experience with coming out. So what I did before I came out to anyone, I had all these really great friends, and we also used to meet in a discussion group. And anyway, I asked every single one of my gay friends their coming out experience. I asked every single one, and so there was the greatest, best experience ever was a young woman whose mother was a lesbian, and she had a girlfriend. So she obviously had the easiest, best. That was, everyone just was so crazy about her, but the rest of us weren't that lucky. And so then there was the bad experiences were, people being asked to leave, or just enduring really terrible hardship because of that. So anyway, I went through this experience, and I would highly recommend that, just because it gave me a sense of things to think about in my coming out process. For example, I met someone, one of my friends came out, and then the parents blamed the new partner. That's who made their daughter or son gay. And so I wanted to make clear to my parents that it was just me. It was really important for me to come out to my parents before they met anyone that I was seeing, because I didn't want to have that experience, for example. And so, I mean, that's why I think it's important to get other people's experiences, so you can see what it is and deal with it that way. So, but also the fact that this is a dynamic process. You're coming out, once you do it, it doesn't ever really end. It just sort of keeps going. It becomes a part of you, and it gets easier. Life gets better. And, but anyway, I do think that's an important thing that I would highlight, is if you have a range of other people's experiences, then you know sort of what to expect and how you want to do this yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for spending your Sunday for National Coming Out Day. I hear a lot of praise on the comments for everything that you're saying, so it's really resonating with people. And if folks haven't been able to tune in live, they can always access this later in the archives. But I just want to say heartfelt thank you to all of you. You've been wonderful. Thank you for being here. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your National Coming Out Day and get some you time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And everybody at home, stay safe, do you, and happy National Coming Out Day. Thank you so much. Be well. And now we are officially kicking off the Pride Stride 5K, 10K. If you're using this as a training day, good luck. If you're running today, wonderful, good luck in running on your route. I just wanted to take a few moments to thank everyone who registered, because a portion of the proceeds for Pride Stride will come back to San Diego Pride to help fund our annual programs, putting on live events like this one for the community for free, keeping everybody connected during COVID. It's a wonderful thing. So thank all of you. And I wanted to say a big thank you to our regional Pride Stride sponsor, Tito's Handmade Vodka. They've been phenomenal this year. And I have Brian here to help tell me a little bit more about their philanthropy in the community. So welcome, Brian.
Great. Well, thanks. We are a huge supporter of San Diego Pride, and obviously it's because you guys are just more than an event. You do events year round and give back year round, which we love. So at Tito's, we believe that we serve a bigger purpose than just making and selling a vodka. And that purpose is supporting giving back to those who need it. And this started with Tito and his wife, Lori, over 25 years ago when they had nothing and were asked to come to an event. And all they could do was bring their product. So they went to Project Transitions and gave a couple products out and served a couple drinks. And they realized that for all the good love they put out in the universe and everything they gave out, they received 20 times more in return. And so they empower all of the employees, all of us, to go out and find causes in our markets and give back to them.
I love that story of like giving back. That's fantastic and very unique for a company. So thank you. And we've seen it from you. You've helped us with Give Out Day. You helped us distribute grocery cards to some of our LGBT bar and restaurant workers, over $30,000 back to the local community. So we are so grateful for that. And I also heard that it's not just the LGBT community you're helping right now. You're also doing a block-to-block campaign. Is that right?
Yes, we are. So we do have many, many different initiatives. Some are vodka for dog people, for shelter and spay and neuter programs with dogs. And more recently, we're working on a program called Block to Block, where you try to make the world better one block at a time. A lot of people do not know where to start. So we've identified that there is a lot of urban areas that don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And we're helping to plant community gardens to help feed for them. So we are doing 7 events in the Western region. We've just completed Denver and LA and San Francisco. And this weekend we're actually down in your neck of the woods in San Diego. In
North Park, right?
It's a Project New Village. You can look it up. It's a great community garden, and we'll be building it out over the weekend to help provide fresh fruits and vegetables to the community.
I love it. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. And thank you for helping us out with Pride Stride. We're going to make sure people in our community during COVID get out, stay healthy, reduce their stress. We're really excited. Thank you so much, Brian.
So, thank you. We are huge fans of what you're doing. So keep doing it.
All right. Have a great day and have fun in the garden.
Thank you.
All right, well, lace up your sneakers. If you're participating in Pride Stride today, thank you again. And happy Coming Out Day, everyone. Whether you're in or you're out, I hope you have a safe and healthy coming out day, and we'll see you virtually soon.